After more than 2 decades in service to the visual arts community of the city of Winnipeg, the Cre8ery Gallery in the Exchange District is hosting its final show. That show is created by the Cre8ery Gallery's curator, Jordan Miller, who joins us here in your wonderful gallery. Thank you so much for having us here, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
It's so wonderful to stand in this space and think about all of the art that has been created here, showcased here. Maybe you can take us back to those early years where you were like, oh, I want to put together this, I think I can put together an entire gallery.
It's a very long story, but
We're here
I'll
for
try
it.
to summarize it as best as I can. So in 2002, I graduated from fine arts, and I looked at what I was going to do next. And there were no gallery spaces for emerging beginner artists who had recently graduated. All the galleries were full. Today, we're actually facing that situation still, and it's actually worse than it was when I graduated.
Wow.
So my first step was to find people to share a community space with. So I started 5 on 3rd Gallery, which then became Outworks Gallery. I left Outworks Gallery in 2006 because I found this beautiful space that had a lot of potential but was really dirty, dusty, and really needed a lot of work. So I got a good rate, and we're sitting here 18 years later.
Wow.
Talking about it closing. So it's just
what a whirlwind. What a total whirlwind. And this really, like, in order to get artists in here, you talk about how dirty and sort of maybe unloved the space was. Maybe you can walk us through what it took to make this into the space that artists have so enjoyed participating in for so many years.
When I arrived, this place was full of old equipment that had to be hauled out. So a guy came in and took out all the piping and everything that was on the walls. And we put so much work. All of this drywall that's up, all the lighting that's up, none of it was here.
Wow.
So there's a main gallery, there's an auxiliary gallery, there's studio spaces, and right now I think I have 17 artists in studios.
Wow. That is incredible to contemplate, and then to imagine all of that over 18 years in this space. When you first started in this space, what did you imagine that the Cre8ery Gallery would be? And now as you reflect on what this place has become, how do those two visions compare?
It's also a long answer, but I will summarize. So we started with a classroom, a gallery, and studios, and an auxiliary gallery. And over time, the space transformed in that we started offering memberships. We now no longer have a classroom. That was a cut with COVID starting. And also when our rent went up, I had to find ways to make sure I had enough money. So the classroom got cut so that it was guaranteed revenue while we were in lockdowns. And we just didn't bring it back because it was full of studio artists at that point. So you can't make changes after it's already in. And just like, we started with 1-week shows, and then we changed to 2-week shows, and now we actually do 3-week shows, with mine being, unfortunately, the last one.
Right. Maybe talk about that moment when it became apparent that this space was no longer viable for artists, because this isn't just it's not just a COVID thing. I understand this decision to close. Yeah.
So in 2018, when I first started the lease, it was $1.80 a square foot.
Okay.
Then it went up a little bit at a time. So at first I got rid of our storage room, and that became a studio. So everyone always jokes that they're in the storage room. The second change was that I split our classroom into 2, so that it was studio spaces on one side, classroom on the other. So our classroom was quite a bit smaller, so then we had less students, but we were also able to pay the instructor a little bit better. Then our next change was we increased our membership, And then my last change more recently was I started renting out my studio here because I moved my studio home because I moved to St. Andrews. So it was a little bit harder for me to get here and use the studio space. So there were small changes, and our membership coming in was probably the most helpful because I was $35 when I started the membership, and now when I ended it, it was $50. And we had 250 members, so that really helped us get through it. Paid for about 2 months of rent. But our rent went up in 2018, and we were told in 2020 it would be X amount. And so I said, how could I make any more changes and make enough money to be able to pay that large bill? Because I knew the increase, it was over $4. I can't remember the exact amount. And that was the start of COVID, was the start of our more recent lease. And so I looked at that number and I thought I would have to sell twice as much art. And in 2020, when the pandemic started and we went into lockdowns, I didn't raise anybody's rent. So all of the studio artists don't know this, but they should have been paying a lot more money. And I decided that I would make enough money in sales to cover them and take a reduction in pay, just to be able to keep the space open for artists. And I also should have increased the cost of this, but I was like, no, I'm gonna make enough money in sales, hopeful person. And I was able to carry it. I wasn't making money, but I was able to pay myself what I was supposed to be able to be paid. I was able to pay all of the bills. Everything was all gravy. But I thought, when the next one comes in, I can't raise their rent 30%.
Right.
And have them stay. Like, there was no way. So, and I honestly think it would actually be more than that I would have to charge. I never did the math because the math was already too hard for me to even.
It was pretty high already.
It was already high. And so what I actually tried to do was I tried to get North Forge to take over a space, and they were like, they increased your rent and then they increased what they would be paying.
Right.
So it would have gone up a couple of dollars, and they wanted to put it in a proper furnace that wasn't from 1985.
Sure.
And they wanted to put it in an air conditioning system so that they could also have events in here. So it just didn't work out for them. And then I approached other people, and also they were like, yeah, it's too high for what we could do in this space. And when you have a big open gallery space, you have to sell something on every square inch in order to pay for that square foot, to pay for that square foot. So if you're not, having a huge store with a bunch of products that people actually want, then you're kind of hooped. And all of these pieces in here, they can sell, and it wouldn't pay our rent and utilities.
Right.
So the chances of a lot of the shows that are in here selling all of their pieces is probably pretty small.
Yeah. Well, and that's maybe symptomatic of a couple of the things that you've been speaking to already. But you mentioned that the Cre8ery Gallery was, created in an effort to address a lack of spaces in the city for artists to showcase their works in order to be sold in the first place. And then there's maybe an added challenge of people maybe not participating in the purchasing of art as much as they are coming to tour through the gallery. As you close the gallery, maybe you can speak a little bit more to the state of these smaller sort of places for artists to create and to showcase, and how the ecosystem for those spaces looks in the city of Winnipeg.
So all of the galleries have waiting lists. And from that, they're looking at who is going to make them the most sales in order to pay for their overhead. It's not that they're running to the bank to be rich. What they're doing is they need to make sure that their overhead costs are covered.
Sure.
And with rising rents and less space, there's more demand for artists, but it becomes more of an artist space and less appreciated by the public. The more places that open, right? So as galleries shrink, there's less places to go, but then there's more opportunities for someone to buy from like one place.
Sure.
But they don't support the underdog artists like I do, which is the big loss for the community that everyone is talking to me about.
Yeah.
And the reason why everyone's sad, and the other thing is the art that you don't see in the other galleries is here.
Yeah.
And the more landscapey artworks are in the, that are a given that people will like.
Yeah.
Usually, but they find the weird stuff here. So that's where the biggest loss for the community is, I think. There's a little bit of weird art out there in other galleries.
Yeah,
Not to say that there isn't any.
Right.
But the standard thought for a lot of spaces is find the stuff that's the easiest to sell, that fits in most homes.
Yeah.
And what are people buying, and that's what they're going for. And I've sold so much artwork through this gallery, like amazing, good quality artists.
Yeah.
The stuff that we have up right now, if you have a chance to look around in the Cre8ery Gallery, those are I picked the people that were very supportive of Cre8ery, people that I enjoyed working with. And it was mostly because we had put out an application for people to apply, but I didn't tell them what it was. And so I picked the people that I felt would be the best for me to work with at this time.
Yeah, of course. Maybe you can speak a little bit also to those artists and what their reactions have been over the past number of weeks since you announced officially that the Cre8ery Gallery would be shutting down. What are they saying to you, and what sorts of things are they contemplating as they look to a future of art in Winnipeg without this space to support them?
So the biggest thing is Jordan, you need to take care of yourself. The second thing is you've done great. You've had a great run. We are going to miss you. We're really sad. Where am I going to go next? I don't like hearing the "we are sad" part, because I'm also sad.
Yeah.
Like this, I keep referring it to, this is my baby. This is what I grew up from the very... It's 18 years old. Like, I'm sending my little adult child off to university. And that's actually how I feel. Like, it's a transition time, just like I'm graduating.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people that have come in here, some of them have had tears in their eyes, and, I'm going to miss you the most and stuff like that. So it's like, oh my God, it really gets me. Because I know that I've gone above and beyond taking on everybody in the arts community. Anyone who could pay the $50 membership, and it sounds terrible to say that, but they got in. That was your commit, was $50. If you had $50, then you were the artist that was going to be filling in for the space. For sure.
Maybe to reflect, maybe not on those sad times like you were discussing before, maybe we can speak to the fondest memories that you have in this place. As you think back on those 18 years, what are some of the things that you're going to be taking with you about your baby's childhood memories, if you will?
Do you know what my favorite part is? And it may sound really odd, was the artists would bring in their art, and I would unpack it, and I would get to see them for the first time, and I'd lay them out in the gallery, and I'd figure out exactly where I wanted each piece. And there's some sort of magic to sort of trying to figure out the story behind the artwork. It says a lot about what I actually like as an artist in the gallery, right? Like, everything had to tell a story. Things are directionally focused as art. They're left facing, right facing, and centered facing. So I was trying to figure out the conversation. Even if it's abstract art, the pieces have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So it was that part that was the most interesting to me. And the other part is I just like working with the artist, and I like teaching them how to install their art. And it comes with the part as mentor and as an art consultant together that I really enjoyed. And those are the aspects that really made me smile. And then sometimes it would just be like turning the lights on just before the show opens, and the artist would be like, oh, I did it,
Yeah.
And the pride that the artists would have, and then the openings when we used to have opening receptions, when a group of people would come in and they'd be like, wow, this is cool, you know, like, and they'd start running up to the counter and being like, I want to buy one, I want to, you know, that part, the energy behind people wanting to take home a piece of art.
Right.
That was pretty much my favorite thing.
Wow.
Other than installing. And seeing artworks just going into homes and them living their best life, as I always say.
Yeah.
Like, it's a gift to somebody to be able to have art in their homes, a gift from the artist.
You have given one last gift to this space and to the arts community through its last exhibit here in this main gallery, some beautifully surreal sorts of images that, as I look around at all the pieces, it feels like they're conjuring up a dream space where rent raises and harsh creative landscapes don't exist. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the pieces that you've made here and why it's, and the significance of having them as the sort of final show in this space.
So for me, I wanted to do a retirement celebration, but I don't want to do a party because I'm immune compromised.
Of course.
So I wanted to do something that was special to say goodbye to everybody without having a party. So I thought, well, I'll do an art exhibition.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explore abstract landscapes because that's what I do now compared to what I did when I started, because when I started I was a very conceptual artist, and I've moved away from that because I need to sell art to make a living.
Right.
So I basically just start with a couple of colors and I just let them flow and I let them create the piece themselves. And then I go back and I enhance what's there with dots. And so they're actually really quite detailed. So when people come in, they're like, oh, do you use a tool for that? I'm like, no, but I'm really thinking about it. The other thing is I was really quite sick last year when I created these pieces from September 3rd to November 24th, and I had surgery on November 25th.
Wow.
So I was working on the inks on the weekends, and then at night I was super tired, and so I put it on my lap and I just kind of detailed them out. And so I actually got all of these works done in that time period because I knew I was having surgery, so I had a little bit of a gun to my head, basically, like, you gotta get this done.
Right, you gotta do this now.
And so, and since my surgery, I haven't been able to produce any artwork. I've literally just started my first one since my surgery 2 weeks ago.
Wow. It's funny you bring up those little dots, because when I'm walking around in this space, that was kind of the thing that stood out to me too, and it gave pieces, especially if I think about the pieces in the back corner as an example, it gives them like a whole other sense of dimension. Like I actually had to look closer to see if there was actual texture elements to it. That's like it's popping off of these panels so clearly.
There's actually 3 parts to my show, which I guess I should talk about.
Violet, please.
So there's the first part of the title, which is Beyond the Green, which is the mixing of blue and yellow, which is where the green comes from. And that would happen organically, and it just happened with me spilling. And then I started a different technique where I was starting to build up the color, and I was using a scraping tool. So I was scraping back and forth, and I was revealing the stain layers beneath the top layer. So there was like a collection of ink that I kind of pulled to the side, and then it collected and it made a darker color. So it would take like dark blue, green, purple, all of those colors, and they would just sit there and they would dry on the surface.
Sure.
And then the, what's the full title? Beyond the Green, Building Perspectives and Layered Emotions. So the layered emotions part was processing what was living inside of me, which was an 11 centimeter cyst, and then a couple of others. And I was like, okay, these are coming out. How does that make me feel? And, you know, I was trying to process my diagnosis and the fact that I was leaving my baby behind and how I was going to tell everybody, which was the worst part. A lot of people who have studios, for instance, have become my friends and my family, and I'm telling them that they have to be out by a certain date and that I will not be continuing. And that part was really hard. So I was processing all of that as I created.
Wow, that's so much to hold on to, and then to be able to, and to need to be able to recover in the midst of all of that is, like, I can't imagine that makes the healing process from an actual physical surgery any easier either. What's next for you after all of this? Is it to say that to find that time to, as your friends have been telling you to do, to take care of yourself, or are you strike me as somebody who's already sort of dreaming about the next thing?
I have a lot of plans actually that are very tentative at the moment. I do want to continue representing artists. How exactly is a little foggy, so I've contemplated starting a website, building people's dreams up in a different way of just being able to sell their work and also make a living. Doing pop-up kind of things at non-gallery spaces, but alternative gallery spaces. None of this is coming to life for a while yet. I need a big break, but I would like to work as a mentor, continue working with as an art consultant, which I've done all the way through, teaching classes, workshops, things like that. I do not want a day job, but if it comes to the point where I can't make it ends meet, I will consider taking on a job that's more artistic, but I don't see anything out there. So, if the right job comes along, I'll apply. But I'm just planning on taking a year, and I have a book idea that I would like to write.
Wonderful.
So, If the Walls Could Talk, Perspectives from an Art Gallery Owner and Artist is the title. I haven't written a single page of it, but I have the chapter ideas in my mind, and it will be a book that will talk about all of the important aspects for artist, buyer, gallery owner.
Wow.
So if somebody says to me, again, that they would like to start up an art gallery, I can say, you know what, I have a book on the topic.
Yep. Here's all the things I know.
This is what you need to, or if an artist says to me, I don't know what to do about being an artist, here's my book, read my book.
Yeah.
And I want to sell it in art galleries and at universities and, all of those places where artists will be, but also where buyers will be, because there's a buyer's etiquette manual that should be written.
Yeah.
How to talk to an artist, things like that.
Right.
What to and not to say, sort of like if you're applying for a show, what to do and not to do, or if you are, I consider the other gallery owners out there my friends, so I have a different kind of conversation with them.
Right.
And so I know some of their struggles, and so I feel those same struggles.
Yeah.
So it's not just a me book. It's sort of like what I've experienced as an artist and what I'm hearing from them. And you don't just show up at an art gallery with your portfolio and stop the person who's working there and say, hey, can you take some time to look at my portfolio? Do you see there's like 10 other people here looking at art? Like, that's who I need to be working with, not the person who wants to bring their portfolio. Like, make an appointment before or after hours or something. All those little things that are super important for an artist to know. I need to write that book.
Yeah, there are relationships to be cultivated. There's meaningful connection to be had, much like the ones that you have formed in this space. And
exactly.
We're as bittersweet as it is to see this place go. We're very excited to see and hear what you're going to be doing next. Thank you so much for taking the time to tell us more about this, and congratulations on 18 years in this space.
Thank you.